second part of this investigation where I want you to start looking at each of these things over here, and I want to say, what happens when I make a negative? When I work with -2, -3, -1, -5, and -10, right? Once that is negative, what's that going to do to the graph? So let's see. So once again, I want you to pause right now and use Desmos, type in the negative coefficients for the value of a over here, and then you tell me what you see. Okay, very good. So now what we want to do is we want to look at those original graphs and let's work with the negatives, right? So I'm going to put in minus a half x squared. Let's put the minus here. Oh, sorry, minus a half x squared. Okay, and let's just switch that color on. There we can see it. What happens when I make it negative x, negative 2x, negative 3x, what about negative 5x, right? And then negative 10x. Now, of course, negative 0x is not going to change anything. We'll sit with exactly the same graph. So I'm just going to take the horizontal line out. Now, guys, you can see it's more or less got the same steepness, right? And not more or less, it's got exactly the same steepness because this graph over here was the graph of y equals 10x, right? But in this case, it's no longer 10x, it's now negative 10x, right? This graph over here was the one for negative 5x. Okay, now what can you tell me about the negative? Well, if the coefficient of x, right, which represents the gradient, the coefficient of x, which represents the gradient, is negative, it clearly tells me that it's going to slope this way. In other words, it's going to slide or slope to the left, right? And when it was positive, like we've seen earlier, it's going to have that same steepness, but it's going to slope to the right. So this is a positive gradient, and this over here is a negative gradient. Okay, so what is that? That's apostrophe VE, negative, and this is positive. Okay, so that's the second part of our investigation.